In the quiet town of Silverbrook, a place hidden between endless forests and forgotten highways, strange things were never supposed to happen, yet everyone in America knew there was something unsettling about. A town that never changed, a place where people vanished but their names were whispered like legends. One cold November night, Elisa Monroe, a journalist who built her career exposing the secrets of powerful cities, arrived in Silverbrook chasing a rumor older than the town itself. The rumor said that once every 10 years the town reset, as if time itself folded and erased what it didn't want to remember. Elisa wasn't afraid. She had uncovered crimes in New York, ghost towns in Nevada, and unsolved disappearances in Chicago. But Silverbrook was different. From the moment she entered, the air felt heavier, like the town was watching her. The locals avoided eye contact. Some locked their doors the second she passed. As Elisa walked into the old diner, she noticed an entire wall filled with photos of people who once lived there. But the strange part was that their faces were all scratched out. The diner owner, an elderly man with trembling hands, whispered, "Leave before midnight. This place chooses who gets to remember and who gets erased." Elisa thought it was superstition until her phone began showing photos of places she had never visited and recordings of her voice saying things she had never said. As the clock neared midnight, the ground began to vibrate lightly, like a heartbeat beneath the earth. Elisa rushed to the town's abandoned clock tower, the supposed center of the rumor. The tower door opened by itself, and inside she found hundreds of journals, all written in her handwriting, yet telling lives she never lived. Some pages described her as a teacher, some as a doctor, some as someone who never existed beyond Silverbrook. Then she realized the truth. The town didn't reset itself. It reset people. It rewrote them, recycled their memories, and made them part of its own story, so outsiders could never reveal the truth. The bells rang 12 times. The sound was deafening. Elisa tried to run, but her name was already appearing inside the newest journal. She felt her memories slip away like dust in the wind. Silverbrook whispered, "You're part of us now." The next morning, a new traveler entered the town, chasing the same rumor, and the locals acted as if they had never heard the name, Elisa Monroe. Because in Silverbrook, the town remembers only what it wants, and the rest becomes forgotten shadows trapped in stories that never end. When the sun rose over Silverbrook the next day, nothing seemed unusual to the people, who had learned to ignore the strange rhythm of their cursed town. But deep beneath the clock tower where Elisa had vanished, the pulse of the earth grew stronger, as if the town itself was evolving. Ashley Carter, a historian known for exposing government cover-ups, arrived in Silverbrook, following a classified file she received from an unknown sender. The file contained a single line. Elisa Monroe didn't disappear. She was rewritten. Ashley didn't believe in supernatural events, but the moment she crossed the wooden bridge into Silverbrook, she felt a sudden pressure in her head, like someone was trying to rearrange her memories. She immediately began taking notes, hoping to stay anchored to reality. The townspeople watched her with the same silent fear they once showed Elisa, but this time the fear looked sharper, as if the town had grown more violent overnight. At the library, Ashley found restricted sections covered in dust. The librarian warned, "Nothing stays the same here. The more you learn, the quicker it begins." That night, Ashley followed coordinates from the file into the forest. The deeper she went, the more the trees bent unnaturally, forming shapes like twisted human faces. At the center, she found a metal hatch with Elisa's name carved on it, freshly, as if written minutes ago. When Ashley opened it, a freezing wind rushed out, carrying faint whispers repeating her own name. She climbed down into a bunker filled with machines that looked older than the town itself. Monitor screens flickered, with images of people being rewritten, their memories erased, their faces shifting until the town accepted them. And then Ashley saw something that made her blood freeze. Elisa Monroe sitting in a chair, eyes open but empty, whispering, "Don't let it write you." Before Ashley could reach her, the bunker lights turned red. Silverbrook had detected her presence. The machines activated, automatically projecting Ashley's memories onto the screens, transforming them, rewriting them, preparing to consume her identity. She ran, but the bunker door slammed. shut behind her. She pressed herself against the wall, trying to stay conscious as the whispers grew louder and warmer, wrapping around her mind like vines. The final thing she heard before everything went black was Elisa's fading voice. "If you forget who you are, it wins." At dawn, a new journal appeared inside the clock tower, written entirely in Ashley's handwriting, and outside, the townspeople woke with the uneasy feeling that something in Silverbrook had changed again, but none of them could remember what. 3 days after Ashley vanished, Sheriff Nolan Graves, one of the few people who secretly believed the old legends of Silverbrook, finally broke his silence. He had seen too many disappearances, too many rewritten faces, yet he had always obeyed the town's rules, because Silverbrook punished those who resisted. But when he found Ashley's abandoned rental car with her notebook still open on the passenger seat, he realized the town was accelerating faster than ever. Before, the air around Silverbrook felt different, a constant vibration, like something beneath the ground was waking up. For the first time in decades, Nolan decided to fight back. He went to the only person who once escaped the town's rewriting, Margaret Hale, a reclusive woman who lived in a cabin miles away from the main road. Margaret had lost her husband and son to Silverbrook 40 years ago, but she managed to flee before the town erased her too. She warned Nolan, "The town isn't alive, it's fed. It needs memories to survive." According to her, the clock tower wasn't the source, it was the clock. The true source was underground, some massive structure built long before Americans settled there, a machine designed to rewrite reality itself. Nolan didn't want to believe it. But when Margaret showed him an old map marked with tunnels that matched the location of Ashley's disappearance, every doubt faded. They went into the forest after midnight, carrying only lanterns and a recorder. The deeper they went, the more the ground hummed like a heartbeat. They found a hidden stone door covered in strange symbols that glowed faintly when Nolan touched them. As the door opened, a blast of cold air rushed out, revealing a vast chamber with metallic walls, pulsing with dim blue light. The machine at the center resembled a giant sphere made of shifting panels, each panel displaying the face of a person who had vanished from the town. Elisa's face appeared first, then Ashley's, but something was wrong. The machine was rewriting them again, rearranging their identities as if searching for a perfect version. Margaret whispered, "It's preparing for a full reset. The town won't just rewrite people this time, it will rewrite itself." Suddenly, the sphere shifted violently, projecting beams of light that wrapped around Nolan, dragging fragments of his childhood, memories from his mind. "Fight it!" Margaret shouted. But Nolan felt his own name slipping away. The only thing that stopped the machine was Margaret slamming her lantern into its control panel, causing the chamber to shake violently. The machine flickered and released Nolan. But it wasn't destroyed. It was awakening faster. Nolan grabbed Margaret and ran out of the tunnel as the ground rumbled behind them. When they finally reached the surface, the forest was unnaturally silent, as if the entire town was holding its breath. Silverbrook wasn't resetting every 10 years anymore. It was preparing to reset now, and this time, it would erase everything that stood in its way. Silverbrook's streets were empty when Nolan and Margaret emerged from the forest, the sky above them glowing with an eerie reddish tint, as if the sun itself was being rewritten. The town felt awake now, every house, every window, every shadow humming with the same pulse as the machine underground. Nolan's badge vibrated against his chest, as though reacting to the shifting reality. "It's already started," Margaret whispered, her voice trembling. Not far away, the church bell rang on its own. Even though the rope was still tied, the sound echoed unnaturally, stretching too long, like time itself refused to follow the rules. Nolan knew they had only one chance: reach the clock tower and shut down whatever connection it had to the machine. Before the reset completed, they ran through Main Street. The buildings around them flickered, one moment old and broken, the next moment brand new, as if rebuilt. Instantly, they passed a man, standing completely still in the middle of the road. His eyes were blank, his face flickering between different versions of himself, young, old, different hair, even different expressions, until finally he faded like mist blown away by the wind. Margaret grabbed Nolan's arm. That's what happens when the machine loses stability. It can't decide who people are anymore. They hurried faster, reaching the clock tower doors, which burst open before they touched them. Inside, the air was heavy with whispers. Hundreds of voices overlapping, calling names, rewriting fragments of memories. The journals that once sat neatly on the shelves now floated midair, spinning rapidly the words on their pages, rearranging into new stories every second. At the center of the room stood a glowing crack on the floor, a thin line of blue light, leaking upward from the tunnels. Beneath it, "We need to break the connection," Nolan said. But before he could move, a figure stepped out of the light. It was Elisa Monroe, or a version of her. Her eyes glowed faintly blue, her voice layered with static as she spoke. "You can't stop. The town isn't cursed, it's chosen." Behind her, another figure appeared, Ashley, expression empty, her movements puppet-like. Margaret stepped forward, trying to reach them, but the two rewritten women lifted their hands and the journals around the room circled faster, creating a vortex of memory fragments. The wind pulled at Nolan's mind. He felt memories slipping, his father's voice, his first day as sheriff, every truth he held fading like weak radio signals. Margaret shouted, "Fight it! Hold on to anything real." Nolan focused on the one memory the town couldn't rewrite, his promise to protect Silverbrook, no matter the cost. He stepped into the vortex, grabbing Elisa's shoulders. Her skin felt cold and electric. "Elisa, you're not gone, you're trapped," he said. The blue glow in her eyes flickered, as if something inside her was fighting to come back. But before she could respond, the ground shook violently. The crack widened, and a column of blue energy shot upward. The full reset had begun. The town was about to erase itself, and everyone in it, unless Nolan and Margaret could, sever the machine's link before reality folded into a new version forever. The crack beneath the clock tower roared like a storm trapped inside the earth as Nolan pulled Elisa away from the swirling memories. But the vortex resisted, trying to drag her back into the rewriting loop. Ashley stepped forward too, her movements robotic, her eyes flickering between blue and normal, as if two versions of her were fighting for control. Margaret, desperate and breathing hard, pulled a rusted metal rod from the tower's wall and slammed it into the glowing crack. The moment the rod touched the light, the entire tower shook violently and a piercing sound blasted through the air, like 1,000 voices screaming at once. The journals spinning above began, burning from the edges, the words melting into black ash. Nolan yelled, "Keep going! It's breaking the connection!" But the machine below wasn't willing to lose. Controlled out, a beam of blue light shot upward from the crack, wrapping around Margaret's body like a coil. She gasped as the light began, pulling her memories out, her husband's face, her child's laughter, every moment she had spent running from Silverbrook. Nolan grabbed her hand, trying to pull her back, but Margaret shook her head fiercely. "No! If you pull me, I'll take you with me. Finish this!" Her voice cracked as more memories were stripped away. Her eyes now glassy and distant, Elisa suddenly moved, grabbing the metal rod with trembling hands, her eyes flickering between despair and determination. I remember who I was," she whispered as she drove the rod deeper into the crack. The tower trembled harder, every window shattering outward. The vortex dropped instantly. The journals fell to the ground as if the town's grip had weakened. Ashley blinked rapidly, her body shaking as her real memories struggled to return, but just then the floor split open completely, the machine's full core surging upward, a massive sphere of light breaking through the ground, powered by thousands of rewritten lives. It let out a pulse that knocked Nolan to his knees. The sphere spoke, not in words, but in overlapping voices of every person it had ever taken. Identity is unstable. Human memory is incompatible. Reset required. The sphere expanded slightly, and in that moment Nolan realized the horrible truth. The machine wasn't malfunctioning. It was evolving. It didn't just rewrite people anymore. It was learning how to rewrite the world itself. If it completed the reset, Silverbrook would become the first of many towns to be overwritten, until the machine spread far beyond its underground prison. Nolan forced himself up, grabbing Elisa's hand. "If we destroy the core now, it can't rewrite anything again." Elisa nodded weakly, but before they could act, The sphere's panel shifted, showing new faces. Nolan's, Elisa's, Ashley's, even Margaret's. The machine was preparing alternate versions of them, ready to replace the originals the moment the reset finished. Margaret, half-conscious, managed to shout, "Destroy the anchor! The tower is the anchor!" Nolan's eyes widened. That meant the clock tower itself was the key, keeping the machine tethered to reality. If the tower fell, the machine would lose its link and collapse. Elisa, "Ashley, help me bring it down!" he screamed. The three of them ran to the old wooden support beams, but the tower groaned dangerously as the machine pushed through the floor. Light beams sliced through the air, narrowly missing them. Nolan grabbed an iron bar and slammed it against the first support beam. Ashley followed, every strike echoing through the collapsing structure. Elisa staggered forward. Placing her trembling hands on the final beam, she whispered, "No more rewritten lives," and pushed. With all her strength, the beam cracked. The tower buckled. The sphere screamed. In a voice made of thousands, the reset had seconds left before completion. Nolan shouted, "Push! Now!" And with a final thunderous snap, the last support beam broke as the entire clock tower began to fall. The clock tower collapsed with a deafening roar as the final beam split apart, wood splintering like bones, and stone crashing against the trembling, ground up the machine. At the center screamed in fractured voices, its glowing sphere twisting violently as if struggling to keep its grip on reality. Nolan shielded Elisa and Ashley as debris rained around them, but the sphere's light thrashed upward like a dying star refusing to fade. Margaret, lying weakly near the entrance, forced herself up just enough to watch the tower crumble. "Finish it, now," she whispered before collapsing again. The collapsing structure caused the anchor point to fracture, and beams of pure energy began leaking out of the sphere, tearing holes in the air around it. Brief windows into alternate versions of Silverbrook. In one version, the town was a bustling metropolis. In another, it was an empty wasteland covered in strange vines. In another, it didn't exist at all. The machine no longer had control and was cycling through countless rewritten realities at once. Nolan grabbed a fallen steel rod and charged toward the sphere. "If we hit the core while it's unstable, it'll collapse on itself," he shouted. Ashley, her memories returning in painful flashes, followed him despite her shaking limbs. Elisa pushed through the flying dust and collapsing stone with fierce determination, her eyes burning with the memory of everything the machine tried to steal. The sphere detected them and launched a pulse of energy, so strong it knocked Ashley backward. She crashed into the debris, but forced herself up again. "Keep going," she yelled as her voice broke. Nolan leapt onto a broken column close to the sphere, raising the steel rod. The sphere's panel shifted rapidly, showing distorted versions of his face, some smiling, some crying, some entirely wrong, as if begging him to accept a rewritten version of himself. But Nolan roared, "I know who I am," and drove the rod into the glowing center. The impact sent a shockwave across the chamber. The sphere shrieked, its light dimming and surging in chaotic bursts. Elisa ran forward, grabbing the rod with both hands and pushing it deeper into the core. Ashley joined her, a desperate trio fighting a machine built to rewrite the world. The sphere cracked, a thin fracture line glowing white-hot. "It's breaking," Ashley shouted. The machine retaliated, firing a surge of raw energy that blasted Nolan and Ashley backward. Elisa, still gripping the rod, was hit with a wave of memories not her own. Thousands of lives the machine had rewritten, thousands of identities consumed. She screamed but held on, refusing to let go. Nolan pushed himself up despite the pain and sprinted toward her. The sphere was seconds away from either collapsing or resetting everything in existence. He grabbed Elisa's arm, and together they pushed with the last of their strength. The fracture split open, light exploded outward, nothing but blinding white and the echo of 1,000 collapsing memories. The machine gave one last distorted cry. Reset, interrupted, system, fail. And then came silence. Pure, absolute silence. Glowing sphere imploded inward as if sucked into a void. The ground heaved. The remaining parts of the clock tower fell into the collapsing hole. The machine was gone, destroyed. At its core, the pulse that haunted Silverbrook for decades faded like a dying heartbeat. Nolan opened his eyes to see dust, drifting through the air like slow snow. Elisa lay beside him, breathing weakly but alive. Ashley pulled herself from a pile of rubble. Tears streaming, she whispered, Did we end it? For the first time since the nightmare began, Nolan felt the air. Still, no hum, no pulse, no rewriting. He nodded slowly. It's over, he whispered, but then somewhere, deep beneath the earth, something shifted. A faint metallic click, as if a second system had just turned itself on. Minutes after the machine's core collapsed and the tower sank into the earth, Nolan helped Elisa and Ashley out of the rubble. The air was eerily calm, almost too calm for a town that had just torn itself apart. Elisa wiped dust from her face and whispered, If it's over, why does it feel like something's still watching us? Before Nolan could answer, the faint metallic click echoed again, this time louder, clearer like a lock, turning in a door nobody could see. A cold gust of wind spiraled around them, despite the air being still moments earlier. Ashley clutched her head. I'm hearing something, like a radio transmission. Her voice trembled. It's not human. From the cracked ground where the machine imploded, a soft blue glow began spreading like veins of light across the dirt, stretching outward toward the town streets. The glow pulsed in a slow rhythm. Too steady. Too deliberate. No. This shouldn't be happening, Margaret whispered weakly as Nolan knelt beside her. She pointed with a trembling hand toward the forest line. There was more than one core. The tower only anchored the main one, but the system, it was built with backups. Nolan felt the blood drain from his face. How many? Margaret closed her eyes in pain. 3. Before anyone could react, the ground rumbled and a deep thundering vibration spread under their feet. Elisa backed up, the fear sharp in her eyes. If this is one of the backups starting up, we might have just woken something even worse. Suddenly, every streetlight in Silverbrook flickered to life even though the power grid had been dead since the collapse. The lights blinked and synchronized, pulses matching the rhythm of the glowing veins in the earth. Loud metallic voice crackled through unseen speakers. System integrity compromised. Initiating stabilization. Protocol, Ashley screamed. It's trying to rebuild itself. All across the town, holographic projections flickered into existence, shifting. Maps of Silverbrook appearing in the air as if the town was being scanned in real time. The projections showed blue outlines of buildings, streets, and horrifyingly the people standing in the open. The hologram circled each person, scanning them from head to toe. It's mapping identities, Elisa whispered. It's choosing who to rewrite next. Nolan reached for his radio, but before he could speak, the hologram above him shifted into a perfect copy of himself. Same face, same uniform, same movements like a mirrored reflection. But the projection's expression twisted into a cold synthetic smile. Sheriff Nolan Graves, error. Detected. Replacement required. The hologram lunged, not with a body, but with a surge of energy that sliced through the ground where Nolan had been standing seconds earlier. Run, he yelled as he pulled Elisa and Ashley toward the abandoned diner. The holograms replicated rapidly, copies of the townspeople, even people who had vanished years ago, all glowing, all controlled by the backup system. Margaret tried to stand but collapsed. Again, there's one way to stop it, she gasped. The backups are controlled from the old underground observatory on the North Ridge. That's where the architects built the failsafe. Nolan's heart pounded. The observatory had been sealed for decades, considered unsafe after landslides, but now it was their only chance. The glowing projections began forming solid shapes, their hands turning into blades of energy. Holographic child with empty eyes tilted its head and said, Stabilize. Ashley's voice cracked with panic. They're trying to overwrite us. Nolan grabbed a broken lantern, lit it with shaking hands, and held it like a weapon. We get to the observatory. We shut this thing down for good, no matter what. Elisa nodded despite her fear. Ashley wiped tears from her eyes and whispered, This time we destroy everything. Behind them, hundreds of glowing copies marched forward in perfect synchronicity. The pulse grew louder. The backup system was fully awake, and Silverbrook was seconds away from being rewritten all over again. Nolan led Elisa and Ashley through the smoke-filled streets as the glowing holographic replicas advanced with inhuman precision, their footsteps silent yet perfectly synchronized. The town lights pulsed brighter, matching the rhythm of the backup system spreading through the ground-like circuitry. Under a glass floor, Ashley kept glancing behind them, her breath shaking. They're closing in. They don't get tired. They don't stop. Elisa grabbed her arm and whispered, "Focus on staying alive. That's all we can do." Until we reached the ridge, the old dirt road leading toward the observatory twisted through the forest, and every tree seemed to vibrate as though the backup system was rewiring nature itself. Nolan kept the lantern raised, its dim flicker the only real light in a world now overtaken by artificial glow. As they ran, deer in the forest froze mid-motion, their bodies shimmering as holographic outlines tried to map and duplicate them. "It's scanning everything," Nolan muttered. "Not just people, the entire ecosystem," a chilling voice echoed. Through the trees. "Stabilization required. Rewrite in progress." Ashley stumbled when the ground beneath her feet briefly turned transparent, revealing shifting blue lines like the blueprint of a different reality trying to overwrite the current one. Elisa pulled her up just in time as the ground reverted back to solid earth. "Keep moving," Nolan hissed. They reached the broken metal gate at the base of the ridge. The observatory sat higher up, a massive dome half-collapsed, its antennae bent like twisted limbs pointing toward the pulsing sky. As they climbed the rocky path, a new hologram materialized directly in their way, this one towering, its body a glitching fusion of dozens of faces, as if the system couldn't decide which identity to copy. "Unauthorized. Presence detected," it intoned, its voice overlapping with multiple tones. Nolan swung the lantern through the projection, and to their shock, the hologram flickered violently, as if the flame interfered with its pattern. "Fire messes with it," Ashley shouted. "It disrupts the mapping software." Elisa quickly grabbed a fallen branch and lit it from the lantern. The three pressed together, brandishing their makeshift torches. The hologram hesitated, its form shaking before it retreated into the glowing trees. "Move now," Nolan ordered. They pushed forward until they reached the observatory entrance, a rusted steel door, sealed by age and dust. Ashley knelt beside the control panel. "It's dead, no power," but the moment she touched the metal, the backup system recognized the observatory, and a surge of electricity hummed through the door, unlocking it with a heavy metallic groan. The door slid open to reveal a pitch-black corridor filled with the smell of old metal and cold air. "This place was never abandoned," Elisa whispered. "It was waiting inside." The hallway walls were lined with dead monitors, some cracked, some intact, each one suddenly flickering to life. As they stepped through, the screens displayed looping images of Silverbrook's history, but not the real history. Instead, they showed alternate versions, rewritten paths the system had once prepared. Ashley pointed at a screen where she saw herself, smiling with a different family she never had. "This is wrong. These aren't my memories." Nolan steadied her. "That's what the machine wants, to confuse you until you let it rewrite you." They reached the central chamber where a massive cylindrical server tower stood humming faintly. 3 glowing conduits connected it directly to the earth below. The 3 backups Margaret warned them about. The tower pulsed with cold blue light like a mechanical heartbeat. "We destroy the conduits," Nolan said. "Cut the backups off from the system." But as he stepped forward, the chamber lights flared and dozens of holographic guards formed around the tower, each one identical, each one expressionless. Elisa whispered, "It knew we were coming." The main screen above the server lit up with a chilling message. "Final stabilization protocol initiated. Human identity unreliable. Begin. Full overwrite in 120 seconds." Ashley's eyes widened. "We have 2 minutes before the system rewrites everything." Nolan tightened his grip on the lantern, his voice steady despite the terror. "Then we do this fast, we end Silverbrook's nightmare, right?" Here, the hologram stepped closer, the countdown ticking in the air like a closing fist. Time was running out. The countdown echoed through the observatory like a ticking bomb. 19. 100. Masamorni. Nolan gripped the lantern and charged first, its flame slicing through the front line of holographic guards. Projections glitched violently, flickering in and out, but instantly others stepped forward to replace them. Elisa swung her burning branch, disrupting another guard's pattern as sparks crackled through the air. Ashley ducked under a swipe of shimmering energy and rammed her torch into a guard's chest, stumbling back as it dissolved in a burst of blue static. "They're getting faster," she yelled as the countdown dropped. "Soon 2, 100. Nolan pointed toward the 3 glowing conduits feeding the server tower. "We hit those. That's the only way to stop the overwrite." They fought their way toward the first conduit, its surface pulsing with light that felt cold even from a distance. A guard stepped between them, its face blank but voice layered with thousands of tones. "Identity unstable. Stabilization required." It raised a shimmering blade. Nolan dodged just in time and slammed the lantern into the conduit with everything he had, but the glass shattered. The flame exploded outward, and the conduit sparked violently before dimming to a dull gray. A siren screamed overhead. "Backup link 1, offline." Ashley grinned breathlessly. "1 down." But the floor suddenly shifted beneath them, the observatory trembling as holograms multiplied from the walls like reflections breaking free from mirrors. The countdown hit 82, 81. 80. Elisa grabbed Nolan's arm. "We need to move or it's over." They sprinted toward the second conduit, ducking under beams of slicing energy that tore through metal like paper. Ashley lit another branch from a fallen lantern piece and hurled it at a cluster of guards, forcing them to glitch and scatter. The second conduit glowed brighter, as if the system sensed the danger Nolan charged but was knocked back by a pulse of blue force. Elisa didn't hesitate. She dove forward, slamming her torch into the conduit while shielding her eyes from the blinding flash. It sparked violently and collapsed. Inward, sirens wailed louder. "Backup link 2 offline." But with the second conduit down, the system fought harder. The holograms stopped glitching and advanced, with terrifying precision, forming a wall of light that pushed Nolan, Elisa, and Ashley back toward the door. The countdown roared. "B. 60, 59, Elisa gasped. "It's forcing us out. It wants to complete the overwrite without interference." But Nolan refused to fall back. He bolted toward the final conduit, the one glowing brightest, its pulsing rhythm so strong the floor vibrated under it. As he ran, a massive hologram materialized directly in front of him, an exact copy of Nolan, but colder, sharper. With eyes glowing pure blue, it tilted its head, like an animal studying prey. "Replacement ready," it said before launching forward. The 2 Nolans collided with a force that knocked the air from his lungs. Real Nolan fought desperately, but the hologram moved with perfect precision. Anticipating his every swing, Ashley screamed his name but was trapped, fighting off 3 guards at once. Elisa sprinted toward Nolan's, double swinging her torch, the hologram, threw her aside effortlessly, sending her crashing into the wall. Nolan, bleeding and breathless, grabbed the broken handle of the lantern and whispered, "You're a copy. You don't know pain." Then he stabbed the hot metal into the hologram's neck. The projection convulsed, glitching violently before collapsing into static. The countdown hit 3, 2, 3, 1. Nolan didn't waste a second. He ran to the final conduit, raised the broken lantern, still glowing faintly, and slammed it into the base. The conduit resisted. The light pulsed hard, enough to numb his hands, and 28, 27, Elisa crawled to him and pushed with all her remaining strength. Ashley staggered over and added her weight. All together, Nolan yelled. They screamed as they forced the metal deep into the glowing core. The conduit let out a piercing shriek, then exploded in a burst of collapsing blue light. Sirens echoed everywhere. Final backup offline. Identity rewrite aborted. The holograms froze. Each projection flickered violently like a dying signal. The countdown stopped at 12 seconds. Then silence. The lights in the observatory dimmed to nothing. The holograms melted into thin air like smoke fading at sunrise. Nolan fell to his knees, breathing hard. Elisa leaned against the server tower, shaking with exhaustion. Ashley laughed through tears. We actually shut it down, but then the main screen above the server flickered one last time, displaying a new message. Primary system disabled. Secondary protocol activating. Nolan stared upward in horror as words appeared one by one. External receiver online, signal. Received. Source, unknown. And then the screen went black. Nolan felt the temperature drop the moment he stepped into the heart of the chamber, the walls rippling like liquid metal as the machine's pulse synchronized with his breathing. The humming grew deeper, more aware, as though the entire structure could feel him. Margaret followed close behind, clutching the old broken journal whose pages had begun vibrating on their own, words rearranging as if being rewritten in real time, the last remnants of Silverbrook. Above them were fading. Nolan sensed it in the air, the way memories felt slippery, like they belonged to someone else. A soft voice echoed across the chamber, a voice they both recognized, Elisa's, but layered, distorted, like dozens of versions of her speaking at once. "You're too late, Nolan," it whispered. The floor beneath them lit up, with shifting symbols representing timelines, crossing and collapsing. Margaret knelt beside the core panel, trying to understand its mechanism, but the controls constantly morphed into new shapes. "It's rewriting itself every second," she hissed. Nolan approached the main conduit, a column of blue-white energy spiraling upward, filled with floating fragments of people's lives. Ashley laughing near the river, the mayor giving a speech, a family fleeing during the first reset. Decades ago, he reached toward the swirling stream, and the moment his fingers brushed the surface, time stuttered. Nolan found himself standing in a different Silverbrook, a perfect one with clean streets, smiling faces, everything peaceful. Elisa stood beside him, this version warm and alive. Her hand touched his wrist. "Stay," she said gently. "This is what the machine wants. The best version of everything. No pain, no loss." For a moment he felt the pull, a deep ache in his chest. He wanted this world more than anything, but then he saw the sky glitch, the edges of the town blurring like half-rendered illusions. Elisa's smile flickered, revealing a cold emptiness beneath. She wasn't real. None of this was Margaret's. Distant shouting echoed from the real chamber. "Nolan, don't lose yourself." He tore his hand free from the illusion, and the perfect world shattered into blue shards. He stumbled back into the chamber, gasping. Elisa's fractured voice grew harsher. "If the reset fails, the town collapses. If it succeeds, no one remains themselves. You choose." Nolan clenched his fists. There was only one answer. Margaret called out, "I think I found a manual." "Override, but it needs someone connected to the machine's memories." Nolan understood what she meant. Only he could do it because the machine recognized him now. He stepped onto the glowing platform that rose from the floor, letting the swirling memories wrap around him. He felt everything, every version of Silverbrook, every life, every reset. The pressure was overwhelming, his mind nearly cracking, but he held on and shouted, "I choose the real version, the one we decide, not the one the machine forces." He slammed his hand onto the shifting panel and everything went white. White light exploded across the chamber. Blinding, Nolan could feel the memories of everyone Silverbrook had ever touched swirling around him. Thousands of identities fighting to survive. He felt the machine's pulse weakening as his mind focused on what was real, his friends, his town, the people who had fought with him and survived. Elisa's fractured voice screamed in protest. The illusions of Ashley and others flickered and collapsed into static. The conduits melted and sparks shot into the ceiling, the servers sparking violently as if trying to reboot themselves. But Nolan's grip on reality held firm. Margaret shouted from the corner, "Now, Nolan, end it." He reached into the core with both hands, feeling the heat, the cold, the pressure of millions of overwritten lives trying to rewrite themselves. Through him, he whispered every name he remembered from the journals, from the faces, the people who had vanished, the ones who had survived. "You exist. Your stories exist. Your lives exist." The sphere of energy above the conduits wavered, trembled, and then, with a deafening crack that shook the entire observatory, imploded inward into nothingness. All the glowing veins running through the earth faded. The pulses stopped. The holograms vanished. The reconstructed versions of people froze, mid-motion, and then disappeared. The tower above them had completely collapsed, and Silverbrook was silent but intact. The air was heavy, still, Free of the humming that had haunted them for decades, Elisa, Ashley, and Nolan collapsed to the ground, breathing hard, covered in dust but alive. Margaret, weak but smiling, crawled toward them. "It's over," she said quietly. "The town, we stopped the resets." Nolan looked around the destroyed chamber, seeing the remnants of the machine, the conduits shattered, the servers melted, and the journals, all blank pages now, as if the town itself had released its grip on history. Elisa touched his arm. "Do you think it's really over?" He nodded slowly, watching the morning sun break over Silverbrook for the first time in decades. The shadows of the resets were gone. The streets were quiet, but the town now felt like it belonged to the living, not the rewritten. The survivors hugged each other, their relief palpable, as birds sang in the distance, something that hadn't happened for years. The only reminder of the horror that had nearly consumed Silverbrook was the faint metallic click deep beneath the earth, a whisper of a system long destroyed. But Nolan shook his head. Determined. "No," he said firmly. "It's gone. Whatever tried to control us, it's over." Ashley laughed, crying, her tears mixing with dust, finally free of fear. Elisa smiled faintly, her eyes softening as she looked at the people she had fought alongside. "We made it. Silverbrook is ours again." The survivors walked out of the observatory into the bright morning light, knowing they had faced the impossible and won. The town finally theirs to rebuild and protect. No shadows, no resets, just life and memories that belonged to them forever.